You are watching our Lessons from the Gates Foundation IPD Challenge webinar. And welcome. We're very excited that you're watching with us. So, what is this webinar about? Well, way back in April 2014, when we were a lot younger and life was different, the Gates Foundation noted the need for a redesign of the way we do professional development. They said teachers deserve professional development opportunities that they shape. Give them the support they need when they need it, and enable them to collaborate and share best practices. Now, that seems like common sense, but we've somehow gotten by with nearsighted professional development for a long time. So with our partners, we at Pivot Learning Partners started right on the ground level, questioning the way professional development has been done, and reorienting toward teacher engagement, leadership capacity, and true infrastructure, laying a framework for a sustainable path toward enabling empowered, effective teachers. So, how did we get there? Well, there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for professional development, and that was never our aim. So what you're going to see today is our changed design philosophy at work at Pivot, and how two school districts, Mount Diablo Unified School District and Riverside Unified School District, applied them to create distinctive professional development methods. Now I'd like to introduce our Pivot coaches. First we're going to start with Jeannie Cash. Jeannie Cash recently retired as the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services in the Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District in Southern California after 33 years in education. She taught elementary and middle school and served as a principal for 14 years. Currently, Jeannie's an executive coach and consultant for Pivot Learning Partners and the Association of California School Administrators. So, Jeannie, take it away.
Okay. I am excited to be here. One of the greatest joys of my work in the past year has been working with the change design process, and in particular working with the Riverside Unified School District and really looking at this whole idea from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation about innovative professional development. In our state of California, we have done a significant amount of professional training around Common Core standards, college and career readiness, and so it has been really exciting to go to a deeper level and to really use the change design process to determine if that has had a significant impact on teaching and learning in the classroom. So let me just review briefly the change design process and to share with you a little bit of what Pivot is looking at training and what we did with our work in both Mount Diablo and Riverside. The challenge that we faced in design thinking, you start with a challenge. What is our challenge and how are we going to address it? And our challenge, based on the studies that we did with the Gates Foundation, was how do we redesign professional development so that we really do see that it has an impact on teaching and learning. And our focus was on the really building the capacity of our teachers and our leaders so that they could design and implement professional development that truly had an impact on student learning. So that was the context. And when we look at what is design thinking, it's really about innovation, and it's about the intersection between solving a problem and creativity. And what's a new solution? What would we envision our future would look like? So we use this process to move from best to next. Best is looking at what we already do, but doing it better. But next is really doing things in a whole new way. And what our goal was through using design thinking was to design a strategy for the delivery of innovative professional development that included teacher voice and choice. We really wanted to promote this as an experiment rather than just a new initiative that we were implementing. So it was an experiment based on, if we do this, then this will be the result. So our training on design thinking really was focused on that it's people-centered. It's about the skills that we need to have to listen with empathy and just the optimism that, wow, there's a lot of creative, untapped sources out there that we can use to achieve our dreams. And it also begins, it's iterative, and that means that, hey, this is an experiment.
Sorry, we seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties with Jeannie's showing. We can wait a moment for her to come back. It's a good time for me to introduce myself because I neglected to do that earlier. I'm Cyrus Namati. I'm the marketing manager at Pivot. Came here from Washington, D.C., where I worked with think tanks in technology policy to education. So I'm thrilled to be at Pivot and making a difference toward actually changing the way people learn. And it sounds as though Jeannie may have cut out, unfortunately. So I will introduce Connie Jensen. So as a former classroom and mentor teacher, program specialist, elementary and middle school principal, and assistant superintendent of school services for 30 years in the Long Beach Unified School District, Connie has extensive experience with teaching and learning, developing and delivering professional development, coaching aspiring and developing teachers and administrators. She's taught various teacher education and administrative courses at the university level and is currently serving as a Pivot Learning Coach to directors and principals in Southern California and participating in the development and implementation of the professional redesign blueprint and multi-tiered systems of support projects. So a natural fit for this project. So Connie, take it away.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's very thrilling for me to continue my work in IPD. As a employee of the Long Beach Unified School District, I watched it evolve for about 2 years and then was able to move on and begin to help other districts do the same thing. So what I'm going to speak about is the preliminary work that goes into what Jeannie was talking about just before us, and that is the readiness assessment and the consensus information that's gathered in order for the design process to take place. So let me share my screen with you. And here we go. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that. And what happens when at the very beginning is that an assessment needs to be conducted for the school districts that agree to be part of this. Information is gathered, and it's in order for the districts to reach an overall consensus about what they believe should be part of the IPD change and redesign. It consists of 30 questions, and they're anchored into the 8 essential building blocks and enabling conditions for IPD. And there's a group of people, it's a cross-functional group that's invited, 15 to 20 teachers and administrators that are invited to take an online survey. They receive a letter at the beginning, and the letter explains to them what they're going to do and how to do it and the timeline that is required for that. A couple reminders may have to be sent out, but overall it's very successful, and it does take some time, but there are thoughtful answers that come about as a result. The purpose of the readiness assessment, there's 3 areas that we want to attend to, and one is to make sure that we engage the group in a very candid and a cross-functional discussion about PD and innovative PD. It also provides for a very high level of understanding of the district's current strengths, its weaknesses, and a look at overall readiness for the implementation of this sort of project. So while it asks everyone questions, their truthful answers are very helpful as they rate the district accordingly. It also helps us create a prioritized plan for the future. So all the information that's gathered in this readiness assessment will become part of the prioritized plan that the design team develops, and they'll use this in the very early stages of the design team, the design cycle. It is focused on the readiness assessment, and the focus on the readiness assessment is around the enabling conditions and the building blocks. And the participants go in and rate the various areas on a scale of 1 to 4, from it does not exist in our district to it might be in the initial stages, it's defined and managed in our district, or it's optimized. And they rate the areas accordingly. They also are asked to include their responses and their comments. So those comments are written, and some of them we found are very lengthy and very thoughtful, and they provide a great deal of information in order to prepare the district. At the consensus meeting, where we look at all this, the lengthy comments are often asked to be explained by the author if there's any questions. So it really does present an opportunity for open dialogue. The enabling conditions around which the assessment is written include the following, and there's a list up there of the 8. And of course, the teacher engagement talks about how much are your teachers engaged in the content and systems development of professional development, and what kind of personalized professional development might be going on in the district. The PD process asks about the needs and the multiple modes or the modes of delivery for professional development. Leadership capacity talks about any innovative vision, what's going on in the district in the way of teaching and learning, and where are you going in what direction. And the resource optimization plays a big role because, of course, we have to be able to think about how to best use time and money and scheduling and staff in order to be successful with a new plan. We look for supportive policies. What kind of policies does the district have in place that support either Common Core implementation or the standards implementation, depending on where you are? And then the delivery infrastructure that exists in the district. What kind of capacity does the district have in order to deliver multiple modes of professional development? It pretty much requires a robust digital platform to support it. And so there needs to be a hard look at what exists and what may need to be taken care of in order to do that. Also, what kind of data does the district collect, and what kind of data is accessible to everyone to inform PD as they move forward? So it might be student data, it might be assessment data, it might be teacher data, some kind of HR data about experience, and things like that. And then lastly, what kind of high quality content and tools exist in order to implement, evaluate, and refine the strategies that are learned in the PD offerings. So those are the 8 areas that are assessed. Following the assessment, a group is formed, and this group is going to participate. It's the same group who completed the assessment, but they attend a consensus meeting, and it is an all-day meeting where they look at each question, question by question, review it, and come up with a consensus score for that particular area. So at the beginning, it takes some time, but as we get our rhythm and get things going, the group begins to move along, and it opens great dialogue and great questions come up. So they do review and examine and discuss each of the responses, and then they do reach the consensus score that I spoke about earlier for each one of the areas. The priorities are set and begun based on those that consensus information. This is the information that's going to be sent along to the design team as they begin the discovery phase, and they will use this as part of the change design and the information that feeds it. They also collaborate at the end of the consensus meeting on some points that they'd like to relay to the superintendent for consideration. And usually it's 2 or 3 more global statements that wrap up their feelings and thinking after having gone through the entire consensus process and really determining what's of greatest importance to them. And then they move along, and that's the culminating activity for the very beginning stages, which of course it's sent along to the design team. And I can tell you that when the process began, consensus is often kind of rugged at the beginning, but it really does smooth out the members of the team, gather a rhythm, and it was a very positive experience in all the places I have been thus far, where the team really feels like they came up with some exciting results and some good thinking, and that was for both Mount Diablo Unified and Riverside Unified. So that's what we do at the beginning, and that's how we kick the process off.
All right, thank you so much. That was excellent. And for everybody watching, we will be uploading all of the documents that we've been showing in this presentation. Now, Jeannie, if we can hear you now, I'm wondering whether we could try to give your presentation another shot.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I think your connection just dropped.
Okay, so as we were saying, let me get my slides up. And I'm not sure why we were cut out, but the design thinking process is the one that we used, as we talked about, that each one of them had a phase, and the most fun phase was the ideate phase, and this was brainstorming, and each person on our design team had a commitment. Brad and Daryl will talk a little bit more about this, and I'm sure Mount Diablo will too, that we just brainstorm different ideas of without putting any limitations or restrictions on our dreams. The second phase, or the phase that we, after the discovery and the ideate phase, was the prototype phase, and that's when each person selected a different prototype based on looking at other districts across the nation who had participated ahead of us in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Innovative Professional Development Challenge, and we studied their prototypes, and we just started in teams designing ones that we thought would work for us. And so then combining all of those great ideas led us into the implementation of the prototype. And right now there are schools in both Mount Diablo and Riverside that are piloting the prototype, and you'll hear more about that from the district leaders. And we'll be gathering feedback throughout this semester and looking at just testing the ideas and learning more about what works for really professional, innovative learning. And that's the last phase in design thinking is where we will be after the prototype is tested, and that's really looking at, okay, what worked out there? What's the feedback from the participants regarding teacher choice and voice? And what kind of next steps do we need to take to really define this? So those are the steps of design thinking and the design challenge that we use. And we went through each and every one of these steps with the as Connie said, we started with the assessment, and we went through the discovery phase. We went into the brainstorming phase, and now we are in the middle of the prototypes, and I think both districts will share theirs with you, and you will see how we put this design thinking process into action. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jeannie. So this is the part that we've all been waiting for. So I would like to introduce our cohorts, if I can use the word and still have it make sense, at Mount Diablo. I mispronounced it earlier. I'm very new to the area, so forgive me. So Mount Diablo, take it away. Please introduce yourselves, and let's see what you've been working on.
Yes, hello. My name is Nellie Meyer. I'm the superintendent of Mount Diablo.
I'm Jonathan Egan. I'm assistant superintendent here in Mount Diablo Unified.
And I'm Christine Ibarra. I'm the driver of this project.
So you say Diablo correctly. This is good to know.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Well, just briefly, as the process has been designed, Mount Diablo is a district with 30,000 students. We have 23% of our students are English learners, and approximately half of our students are in poverty. And so within that context, we have had access to quite a bit of professional development over the years. And I think one of your previous presenters stated it eloquently when she talked about now really is the time to give importance to teachers' voice and teachers' choice. So one of the things that we did to start the process, as was mentioned, is we had a sampling of teachers, administrators, and others who we surveyed. And as was mentioned, the survey was the results were very candid, and it really was the starting point for the work that we were doing in Mount Diablo. And from that, we narrowed it to the small cohort design team, and we're going to share a little bit more about that.
All right, so we're going to pop into a presentation right now and share with you guys.
We hope the presentation will share the process that we use to create our design team and our work.
Can you guys see that now?
Yep, you're looking good.
Okay.
So to start off in Mount Diablo, we've started with the phrase "we heard you" because we wanted to really emphasize that we wanted to listen to teachers' voice and what was working and what was not.
Anyway, when we, one of the things that we had spent a lot of time doing over the last couple of years is we were giving a number of surveys after every workshop and training that we had provided teachers and looking at the feedback from those teachers, trying to really take to heart what the teachers were saying in those surveys and make sure that we were incorporating that when we were designing this model. And so a lot of, as you can see on the screen, you know, teachers weren't thrilled with the one-size-fit-all, that they really didn't find the application aligning with what they needed in their classrooms. And they had, you know, they really wanted something that was differentiated, something that was really going to impact them where they were at that moment. So with that, our design team came together. We came up with our prototype, and in the fall, we launched at all of the sites that had volunteered to participate in the pilot. And we wanted to have a nice grabbing way of kind of kicking off this presentation in those schools. And so our team developed this little iMovie, and we're going to share that with you. So that was our you know, our fun way. It was our little trailer. It definitely grabbed the audience, and it allowed us to have that conversation with teachers it started off in a very positive way. So obviously we know that this is work that we had done in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and then also with Pivot Learning. And so what we created was kind of a one-page overview of what were those key pieces, those essential elements of, and what made our My Learning Path unique for our district. And so we're going to kind of go through that quickly. One, we wanted there to be a focus. We wanted teachers to have choice, but at the same time, we wanted that learning to be linked to initiatives in our district that we found in our LCAP that were then focused to site plans that were certainly attached to student outcomes that are specific to all of our schools. We're a pretty large district. And then also linked to the California standards for the teaching profession. The next key piece of our key feature to our My Learning Path was to have a learning partner. And we wanted it to be really, this is another teacher choice. We wanted them to be able to select. It could be a colleague that they were working with at their school or a different school. It could be a teacher leader within the school. It could be a coach or an administrator. And we wanted that partnership. I mean, the reason that we had created that piece was we wanted teachers to have someone that they could go through this process with. Since it was new, we wanted to assure that they were being supported throughout, and having a partner to do the work really lended itself to that. From there, working with their partner, they're going to create a personalized learning path. And this was just a way to log what they wanted to be focusing on so that it was meaningful to them. And from there, within that plan, they were going to take an area of focus and construct a question of inquiry that mattered specifically to that teacher. Within that plan also, they were going to identify, we selected the modes of delivery were important. Typically, historically, we've been doing a lot of workshops. We've done some trainer of trainers type of work. None of those were as effective as we were hoping, so we wanted to open that up to different modes of learning. So giving teachers a choice to do independent work if they wanted to read a book or do some research online. If they wanted to work with some colleagues or groups, whether it was virtually or in person, and then having a virtual learning platform so teachers could access videos and do work that way. And then we still wanted to maintain our workshops that we had within our district and outside. So from there, teachers really get to work. They kind of identified in their plan what they wanted to focus on and how they wanted to do it, and then they go about going online, looking at different modules, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, talking with coaches and doing some work with them, attending seminars, and collaborating with colleagues. Another big part for us that was really important was in the past, we hadn't been measuring how we were noticing the impact of what teachers were learning in their classroom. Where was the evidence that anything that they had attended in the past had really made an impact in their classroom? And so we wanted to build that piece into is how are teachers actually integrating what they're learning, adjusting, and engaging students. Reflection is also a very big part, especially this year in our pilot year. We're trying to not only have teachers reflect upon what they're learning, but on the process itself. So as we grow over the years and try to bring on new schools into My Learning Path, we want to make sure that we're doing it in as seamless and supportive as possible. And then the final thing, this was an area that we always knew we weren't doing as good of a job of, is really celebrating the successes. Teachers do a lot. They do a lot of learning and planning and collaborating, and we weren't really spending enough time recognizing that and sharing their successes. What were they doing in the classroom that was having a tremendous impact on student learning, and trying to bring that to light.
So one of the things that we did was we collaborated with and partnered with Edivate, and they are an online platform for professional development, and specifically what they do is they provide a plethora of resources for teachers to choose from, and it also tracks what teachers are doing and how often they're on there, so it provides online where they can do it at any time, 24/7, collaboratively, independently, and so forth. And so Edivate, as you can see in this screen, is this idea of providing for teachers whatever they need, whenever they need it, and they can join, for instance, blogs. They can connect with people not only within their own district, but from kind of around the country. And so that's the online component that we are piloting right now with our schools that are participating.
One of the ways that we engaged schools was through our design team. So many of the members from the design team were very excited and took it back to their school and engaged their school and leadership with participating in our pilot. So we made sure that our schools very much wanted to be a part of the pilot, and they volunteered to be a part of our pilot. They included the following schools. You can see we had one middle school, and then we had 4 elementary schools who were very engaged in the process.
So the way we broke down our timeline for the year, it's basically into 4 quarters, starting with the summer months. You can see them there. So in phase 1, our goal was to get out to those sites that were going to be participating in the pilot and launch there with their staff, which is why we wanted that trailer to kind of grab them at the beginning and get them excited from the very start. And then we also wanted them to select their learning partner. And schools did that in a number of ways. Sometimes teachers got together based on a common focus. Maybe they were getting together with teachers at their grade level. It could have been across schools that were participating. So teachers were given a lot of flexibility in how they selected those partners. And then in phase 2, which is where we are right now, they have teachers, most of them I would say, have already completed their learning path. They have either written it out in a paper form, or they have entered it into Edivate. They have an e-portfolio feature in Edivate, which teachers can capture it there. And then we're getting ready to, by the time we get to winter break, they will have participated in a reflection through SurveyMonkey, where they can capture their thoughts so far. So phase 3, we were very intentional. We wanted to create a midway celebration. And so in January, we have a district-wide professional development day already set aside in our schedule. And those sites have already decided they wanted to come together and start off that morning with a fun way to celebrate. We're going to be giving away funny awards. We're going to be showcasing some of the things that teachers are doing in classrooms, and just having a nice way for all of the schools to come together and share their experiences with the work so far. And then there's another survey. So in phase 4, this is kind of the final piece for the year. It's the wrap-up. We'll have the final reflections, really looking at it. We want to do some comparison data by looking at some surveys from teachers that are not participating in this pilot versus those that are, and seeing what that satisfaction, what the differences may be within that. And then have a huge culminating end of year celebration, and then making some plans for what next year might look like for my learning path.
So to wrap it up, we wanted to emphasize that the importance of listening to teachers has really furthered our team's goals. And much of the previous professional development that we had was centrally determined and centrally led in many instances. So this paradigm shift to respecting and engaging the expertise of our teacher leaders and our site leaders has been extremely positive. Our initial feedback has been very engaged and excited, and we've heard that there is an interest by other schools to continue and to grow what we're doing.
So thank you.
And thank you, Mount Diablo. As you can see, this follows basically the rubric that Jeannie and Connie were talking about, but the execution is probably very different than you might have imagined. So that's what this change design is all about, is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for a school. So I'd like to take this time to pause to let everyone who is watching this webinar know that we're open for questions right now and throughout the webinar. In your video screen, you should have an area on the right where you can ask questions. If you don't see it, you can just post on the event page. So post your questions for Mount Diablo. We'll wait for those to come in, but while we're waiting for those, I'd like to introduce Riverside Unified School District, who again used our same change design methods to come up with a very different professional redesign plan. So, Riverside Unified School District, introduce yourselves.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Scheer. I'm the Director for Elementary Education at Riverside Unified.
And Daryl Hanson, I'm the Director of Secondary Education for Riverside Unified.
And so we're pleased to be able to share our journey as well this morning. So just like Mount Diablo, we were invited by Pivot Learning Partners to participate in the IPD redesign process, and we also administered the readiness assessment last December to about 30 of our district and site teachers and administrators, and we also held a consensus meeting and reviewed the results of that assessment. And so interestingly enough, here's some of the results that we had. Let me share my screen. Sorry, hi Mount Diablo. Let me get off of that. So, and let's see.
You did it.
Sorry, I might have done something and I lost everything in my screen. I don't know what happened. So.
No worries. We just need to see the different window that's up for the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
No, right now we're still looking at us. So you just need to switch windows, Alt-Tab.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Let's do that right there. Oops. Can you see it now?
No. Can you minimize the Hangouts window?
Hold on.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone.
Can you see it now?
No, we're still... Oh, hold on a sec. Maybe we are getting something. No, now we're seeing Mount Diablo again.
Okay. So I'm doing Alt-Tab. So I'm going to pick right there. Can you see it now?
No. Can you just minimize the window at the top right where we're looking at the Google Hangout?
Okay. So we see it now?
Now we're paused. I think your computer's just trying to catch up. I'll look for it in a moment to open up on mine if this doesn't work out. Okay, I'm just going to screen share my screen, and you can just let me know how to continue. So just say next slide when you're ready. I'm going to go ahead and do the presentation here.
Okay. Okay, great.
Right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Okay. So you have an older version. We added some information about our consensus scores earlier today, but that's okay. We'll go from here. So anyway, the consensus was that we needed to have, just as the others were sharing, a way for teachers to have more voice and choice in their terms of their professional development. We want to maximize the impact of teaching and student learning and personalize the professional development experience. And so, just as was described, we also assembled a design team, and that included a number of staff from across the district, including a number of teachers. And we studied those consensus results, reviewed the design challenge that was presented to us from our superintendent, and engaged in a process of that design thinking, and gathered lots of data and feedback from colleagues around the district, and ultimately drafted a prototype, which we're going to share with you this morning. We are using this actually in 6 of our schools, including elementary, middle, and high schools. We're not actually piloting it with all of the teachers in those schools, but with either a grade level or a department. So we've got approximately 50 teachers across the district that are participating in the IPD process. And so I'm going to turn over to Daryl, and he'll walk you through the next slides here.
So in starting with the program, as you see the cover page, welcome to the RUSD Individualized Professional Development Redesign Plan. Next slide. This plan is designed to create high expectations for all teachers in the classrooms. Next slide. And those high expectations should be surrounded and encompassed by our overarching goal of the district is to increase rigor and engagement in the classrooms. Next slide. And we've done this while maintaining our focus around Lencioni's 6 critical questions for our organization. This is, again, one of our district goals. And why do we exist? We exist to educate, inspire, and prepare students to make a positive impact locally and globally. And then how do we behave? It's our core values of student learning and student well-being. Next slide. What do? We're here to educate students, and how will we succeed? We will succeed by intentionally ensuring a high-quality learning. And I'm not going to read. You can read those as you go through. And lastly, next slide. The final 2 questions asked are: what is most important right now? That we invest in our students by aligning all programs with our local control accountability plan. And who must do what? We've designed divisional, department, and individual roles to review and monitor this plan as we move forward. Next slide. And ultimately, through this process, we continue our work to create a more engaging classroom that better prepares students to be college and career ready. Next slide. So, say hello to our new form of professional development. We started, again, next slide, we started with the creation of the design challenge. This entire process started through this design challenge, where a group of teachers, administrators, and district personnel working to assist RUSD to maximize the impact on teaching and learning through the inclusion of teacher voice, personalization, and PD evaluation tools that will measure impact on student learning. Through these discussions, we designed a 7-step process, much like Mount Diablo is their process, for individualized professional development. Next slide. We start with our self-evaluation. Step 1 in the process is our self-evaluation program. We start with Gallup's. We focused on Gallup's StrengthsFinder exam. The teachers take this exam, helping to identify their 5 greatest strengths. One of our ideas here was to not only look for areas of improvement, but to identify the areas of strengths that they already have in their classrooms, identifying their 5 greatest strengths, and making sure we develop and move a program that builds on the strengths they have. So they start with the StrengthsFinder exam. They also take a self-evaluation exam. This self-evaluation helps to identify their areas of focus as we move forward. Next slide. So again, we start with the StrengthsFinder, and we move to the self-evaluation. And then once they've taken those 2 exams and start to identify their path for growth, they can begin their journey. Next slide. And the second step is their step 2, which is the focus. Next slide. The categories of focus, we look at the areas that teachers may be most interested in improving on, and what we really wanted to do is narrow it down to some specific areas. We obviously couldn't and wouldn't be expected to create a ability to support whatever focus area they may come up with. We wanted to narrow it down to 5 categories of focus, which is their content knowledge, pedagogy, curriculum and resources, technology or assessment. And then that gave us the ability to focus in on the tools and have the tools available to build in those areas. The third was their personalized goals. Next slide, we take teachers through that roadmap for success. We ask them to focus in and answer the following questions. What do you want to develop? How do you want to get there? And how do you measure your success? Next slide, they then identify a learning partner. Teachers were asked to, during this process, select a partner to assist them. As teachers moved through this program, we wanted to ensure that they were not alone, that they had somebody to reach out to. And we also have instructional specialists and staff developers at the district office that are going through this process with them so that they would always be available to reach out to for assistance. Next slide. Step 4 was the beginning of their professional development. Next slide. We asked them to identify how they're going to move through this process. Maybe they're interested in face-to-face. They'd like to work with their learning partner or staff developer or somebody in a face-to-face program, or maybe they're more interested in a collaborative. A number of our groups, our school sites are working with their departments and wanting to do this as a group, or maybe they're more interested in using online resources and online tools to develop their growth. Either way, any ways they wanted to do it, we wanted to support in their plan. So they identify and help us by identifying their plan. Next slide. They then start to implement their program. Next slide. As they develop new schools and approaches to bring in their classroom, we wanted them to immediately start implementing those into their classroom so they could see the development as they move through the school year. Next slide. Finally, as we move towards the end, as they start to develop their plan, they start identifying a way to get student feedback, which is the 6th step. Next slide. So they work with their instructional specialists or their staff developer to create a way to receive student feedback and really measure how they've been successful and what they've learned, what they've brought into the classroom, how it's impacted learning. The 7th step is their self-evaluation. Finally, this is at the end of the program. We've asked them to share in writing their thoughts on the growth they've achieved and what areas of improvement we need to bring into this program. And that concludes the 7 steps for our professional development, individualized professional development plan.
Yeah, and so just to add to it, this last slide just shows that we used a couple things. One, we have an existing learning management system, Haiku, so we actually created a Haiku page just for the teachers that are participating in the IPD. And so that's where the teachers would go to actually the tool they're going to use. We created a Google Doc that they download, and then they input their plan. So they take the surveys, input their information, ultimately craft what their path is going to be, and they do all of this in consultation with their learning partner. And that is the data and the information that we're gathering. We do ask them to provide get that student feedback, although we're being very careful about not, and we're having those discussions about what do we look at, what do we not look at from the district perspective. So we want the teachers to feel comfortable that they're not being evaluated by this process, but that they are actually the ones guiding and leading the process, and they're using it very formatively to make an impact on their classroom and ultimately make impact in student learning. And so we're kind of working through all those processes. We're going to be meeting again in the near future with the design team to kind of see how things are going. We have one particular specialist that is sort of coordinating and guiding and being that point of contact for the folks that are participating. And so we're just trying to figure out what the best processes are going forward, and then ultimately how are we going to scale this to our larger community of teachers. We have well over 2,000 teachers, so we're just doing it with 50 teachers right now. So how do we do that with 2,000 teachers going forward? And so that's kind of some things we're thinking about and pondering as we move forward. So we're definitely still we've ideated, we've produced a prototype, and now we're going to be evaluating that prototype and deciding how we scale it. And we may not go full scale next year. It may not be able to be possible, but we may, because we have just to see what the need is, and we were very open about they could choose quite a few things or quite a few areas to focus. So how do we manage that? How do we support teachers adequately? So we're having all those conversations. And I think that's it, Cyrus. We had a copy of the learning plan itself, but since I can't control it, it may or may not be valuable to kind of go through. So if you want to pull it up, you could maybe just show the infographic. We'll just notice that the infographic looks very similar to Mount Diablo. So obviously we were all thinking along the same lines here. We have a very similar process.
Yeah, let's see if I can bring this. And if you can stop the screen share.
Okay.
All right. I do have it here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so this is just our infographic. If you want to zoom in, you can kind of see very similar. We just outlines all of the processes that Daryl walked us through the PowerPoint. So starting with that self-survey and categories, we did ask teachers to we encouraged them to choose an area of focus that aligned with our district areas of focus, but we didn't require them to do that. So that was there's a lot of conversation about that, but we left it open so they could choose. We showed them what the district focus was. We even encouraged them to look at what their school site's focus was. Because remember, we're only dealing with individual departments or individual grade levels, but we still left it open so that if people wanted to choose something that wasn't aligned with the district or site focus, we let them in this case. We'll be having conversations about all that, the validity of that, the effectiveness of that as we go forward. So, and then going through the rest of the process, we don't need to go over the whole thing, but this is the tool that the teachers are using as they go through it. And each page kind of is places where they fill out this information, write in their goals, write in their reflections and feedback. What you're looking at there is some of the survey questions that we asked them to take. Everything links back and forth. So, so it's the tool that we're using right now for our process.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Riverside. So as you can see, these are two very different methods toward the same goal, using the strengths and tools that each district had at their disposal. So this is definitely going to be different for every district. If anyone has questions for Riverside or Mount Diablo, please add it to the questions area or on the event page. I haven't seen anything come in yet, so I would like to go ahead and ask a question of each district. What is the single biggest difference from this professional redesign effort to ones that you've had in the past? Mount Diablo, if you could speak.
I would say the online portion, working in Edivate, that's been, I think teachers have gone in and looked at videos, but to do it on a specific platform, and then to also be able to have their e-portfolio there as well so that they can log information and put their learning path there. So I think that, because that required a little bit of training and getting them comfortable with that, but yes, that would probably be the biggest feature that's different.
And I would also share that the letting go of letting it go and letting teachers decide has been a huge shift for us, and really honoring their expertise. And that whole idea was treated somewhat with skepticism at first by some of the sites. You know, you could kind of see really we could work alone, or really we could just work with one person, but that definitely has been a big shift for us.
Yeah, as someone who comes from a family of teachers, I really appreciate that. My wife is a teacher, my sister's a teacher, and this is the exact sort of thing that they've been clamoring for. Because you know, when you give people opportunities, they want to take them. They want to be better teachers. So that's fantastic. Riverside, how about you?
Well, I think we'd echo some of what Mount Diablo said. You know, that just that issue of you know, letting people make those choices about what it is that they want to focus on. You know, and it sounds really good. It also, from a district's perspective, how do we support that? So we want to do X, Y, and Z, and where do they go to access those resources? And then we have to be a lot more flexible in terms of whatever support we can provide. We have to be more flexible. So it's a lot easier to plan, you know, for something you said this is our objective and this is what we're going to do. It's a lot harder when you don't know what somebody wants until they ask for it, and then now in time or in a truncated amount of time, you've got to respond to that need. Now, it's not that we solely have to respond to the need. There's online resources. There's other sources. There are their colleagues that have some of these great ideas as well. It's not that the district has to solve all of their problems or all their issues or what their needs are, but it does make it challenging for planning, because until you know what it is, you can't respond. And then while it's small, it's somewhat doable. We have a number of staff developers and specialists that are able to help. How do we do this with more teachers? And it's larger. So yeah, there's still things we need to sort out and work through going forward. So,
and I think it's not just new for us at the district office. It's gaining that trust, and it's new for the teachers as well. Teachers are going through a new thought process of creating the path that they want to go on. They for how many years now has it been that professional development is created and they fit our model, and now they're creating a model for themselves, and that's been a challenge for some to kind of get their minds around it. They have to look at and identify what their needs are. They're not just waiting to be told any longer.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, we're running up on our time. I'd like to ask our coaches whether they have any final thoughts on their experience, because you are the professional design experts we have here at Pivot Learning Partners. So what has been different this time? What's been most rewarding about the experience?
I think for me personally, the most rewarding thing has been to work side by side with such an outstanding design team in Riverside. And I think having teachers on that design team sit side by side with the administrators, and as we went through the design thinking process, in the end, to hear the teachers raise their hand and say, you know what, we need to volunteer to be part of this prototype and this experiment. And I thought that was really really rewarding to work side by side with teachers so that voices of the district's initiative were heard, but as well as teachers saying, hey, this is personally what I need to be successful.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeannie. Oh, Connie, your microphone isn't on. I'm going to see if I can unmute you.
I did.
Okay, there you go.
We're good now. I'd like to second what Jeannie said, but I also would like to compliment the districts for taking this concept, and it really is a concept, and making the rubber meet the road and implementing it in their district with such success and such positivity around it. I think it's remarkable to see what happens in a year's time. And I have a feeling that they're going to get results that are very motivating to everyone and will continue the process. So hats off to the districts for their ability to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I'd like to thank our coaches, Jeannie and Connie, and our cohorts at Mount Diablo and Riverside Unified School Districts for sharing their experience with us. It's been quite a journey, and we're looking forward to experiencing it with more schools. If you have questions or you'd like to learn more about this process, please send us an email at info@pivotlearningpartners.org, and we'd love to talk to you. This video will be up on our YouTube page instantly, I believe, so you can watch it as you like, and the event page will have all the materials that we've presented so far. So once again, thanks everyone, and thank you so much for watching.